I have been playing Shadow of the Erdtree, the long-awaited
check out this
expansion.
indie game, hey?
Yes, what an indie game. Casual, long-awaited expansion for the somewhat, probably like okay game, Elden Ring.
Not as exciting as the potential of Silksong one day, but close.
It'll fill that void, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Shadow of the Erdtree is, all jokes aside, like I think it will be, I don't know if they have confirmed, but I think the only expansion for Elden Ring.
Yeah, they have confirmed that, yeah.
Very deceiving because I remember reading somewhere that they say, the new map is about the size of Limgrave, and you go like, yeah, that's pretty big, but like I was kind of hoping for, like, I don't know, not a whole full-fledged game, but maybe something a bit bigger. What they don't tell you though is that, okay, yeah, on the surface area, like the actual map size is probably the size of Limgrave, but there's so much verticality in this new map. It is so dense and there's so much to do, which is a good thing. Like I was hoping for a lot more to do. And it definitely doesn't disappoint on that front. I feel I've probably played maybe 12 to 15 hours, and I feel most of that has been me just riding around the map, grabbing new map pieces, doing more of like, those caves and side dungeons as opposed to committing to, a couple of the bigger castles or spaces I've seen. I've kind of just looked at them and gone like, now I'll come back. Like I want to save this for later. I want to kind of level up a bit, because the DLC, when you load in, it hits hard. I'm playing, one nice thing about Elden Ring versus other From games is typically when you roll credits, you get kicked out and say, you're done, new game plus, that's it. Elden Ring is a rare exception in that you can just pick up where you left off. So if you're looking to pick up the expansion, don't worry, you can just pick it up. If you haven't done the prerequisites, fighting of General Radahn and Old Moog in the Blood Palace, you're going to have to do that. But if you've done that already, you can just jump straight into the DLC. And despite my high level, I think my character's like level 150 or 160 where I launched in. Things hit very hard. I still died very easily. The first few bosses I fought were like almost one-hitting me. But the thing is, it's because Shadow of the Erdtree has a separate leveling system, if I can call it that. So throughout the new map area, there are these, I think they're called Erdtree fragments. Think of it, like in the base game where you picked up golden seeds to replenish to give your flask more charges.
Yes.
It's kind of like that, but it's a separate leveling system where you get a Erdtree blessing. And the description basically says like the higher your blessing, the more damage you deal and the less damage you take. So I don't know what the raw numbers are, but I imagine it is like I've got a blessing, my level's 8 now. I don't know what it goes up to. I'd imagine I don't think it's 10 because I haven't done the whole map, so I'm guessing like 15, maybe 20. But I imagine that every level you get, there's a percentage something. So like, I do at level 8, I do like 10% more damage and I take 10% less damage or whatever it is. The point though is that it's pretty important. I can see now that because I've got a couple levels, I'm dying a lot less. So you're kind of incentivized to explore, roam around, poke into every cave you can, go into certain areas to find these fragments and just do open world Elden Ring things, and that is just walking around and just enjoying the joy of discovery, which I think that's one thing that blew so many people away with the base Elden Ring. It was that Breath of the Wild thing of you can go anywhere, you can do it however you want, and I think Elden Ring just did that so well. So having more of that is just really, really pleasing me. Basically,
I think pulling that off a second time is such a feat because like you said, I think what people confuse about games like this and The Legend of Zelda is they think it's just quantity that gives it that that sense of exploration and discovery, but it takes a lot of careful design to actually make the world feel like something you are unwrapping in a natural way and keep it rewarding for the, tens, potentially hundreds of hours that you keep playing. So for them to integrate like a whole new area into the existing map that kind of recaptures that sense of wonder, I think is, to me, far more impressive than what a Tears of the Kingdom did in recontextualizing an area that you were very familiar with already. Yeah. So I think From is like, kind of overtaken Nintendo in that regard, and like understanding what makes an open world so captivating to engage with. So it's really cool. Like I got the sense of that from a lot of the reviews I read, was that they recapture that the first few hours you spend with Elden Ring, like, oh my god, this is such a cool space to just kind of explore and peel back. So I'm glad you're having that sort of experience with it as well.
I think Andy Cortez from Kind of Funny, he had the best analogy when I was listening to the review a week or two ago, and you're saying like, yeah, like it's really good, but it never gives you that first, like the original high of the first Elden Ring. And he's like, imagine you're a kid and you're having lemonade for the first time. You're like, oh my god, like lemonade, oh, like it's sour but it's so nice. But you drink it a second time, it's really good, but it doesn't have that same like pop. Like it's a good analogy, because like it is that and it's no fault of Elden Ring. Like what do they expect it to invent time travel and take us all back? So we've never experienced it. But just the fact that they've managed to keep the same level of quality and then improve in a lot of, not a lot of ways, but in some ways, I think, like I mentioned earlier, where I look at the map, I'm like, it doesn't look that big, and it's not, I'm just being greedy. I just want, as much as possible. But then as you start peeling away, you'll stand on a cliff and go like, oh shit, like there's a whole area down there. Like I know I'll get there at some point, and you do. You stand at the bottom of that pit, you look up like, that's the cliff I was on like 5 hours ago. How the hell did I wrap around down here? They've played with verticality, and I mean, I know in the base game that we had the whole, the whole river area underneath, and even that was like like you go down that lift for the first time, like, oh my god,
the very first time you see this whole world underneath the existing world is like, just such a mind-blowing thing.
There's a whole map underneath the main map.
Yeah.
But the thing with that is that you kind of just went down a lift, and I'm not knocking it at all, don't get me wrong, but you go down a lift, it's like, cool, there's a whole area tucked away underneath, the overall map. Here, it's like, there's no lifts. Just the way that levels connect feels so organic, and there's just such level of verticality where, I feel that they've done such a good job. Even like if you think of the base game, so like you run around Limgrave and Khalid, like there are these big, the Alta Plateau, there are these big open areas. You can spend hours in any of those single areas. Here, there feels like there's the same, not the same, like don't quote me on that, but like it feels like there's the same number of areas as the base game, but they're a lot smaller and they're connected closer to each other. So it is funny how you can very quickly move from one area to the other, and you're still discovering things almost like at a quicker rate. So it's just
like a best hits version of the main game.
100%, yeah. It's just, I don't have to spend like 10 hours exploring Limgrave to get to the capital, whatever, or Lernia, whatever. It's like I can, 1 minute I'm riding in the opening area, then the next I'm in some like forest, the next I'm in some like mine. There's just the level of I think biomes, I guess is the right word, on offer, and just how close they are to each other, how bite-sized they feel while still being like these open big spaces to explore. I don't know, it's a really good time, and it has me wondering, like, I don't know what their next game is. We knew this was coming.
That sounds fantastic to me, honestly, because like I think the most daunting thing for people coming back to Elden Ring, because it's like they did this in like 2 and a bit years. Yeah. So a lot of people haven't played, the majority of people I would say haven't played Elden Ring in some time. So I've had this thing where it sounds very daunting to reteach myself how to play it, and then to kind of play an expansion that is in many ways bigger than a lot of From's previous whole games. Like Bloodborne is a 20 to 30 hour game, and to think that this expansion dwarfs that in
It's-
scope.
yeah.
It's kind of like insane. So I think having the design like you described it, where it's not just these big open spaces that feel like massive spaces that integrate with the existing world. It just feels like smaller spaces condensed into one another is a very smart idea. And it reminds me of Bloodborne's Old Hunters DLC, where you went across like 3 distinct map areas, but each one was much smaller than like an old Yharnam or the Forbidden Forest or whatever. So you got through them a lot quicker. And I think that's a really good approach for, a game where you have taken time off of it, and you want to come back and experience a condensed version of it that is very, very good still.
Yeah. So it's a good time. It's my only real criticism at this stage is that it's got the typical From problem, in the sense that I've entered one boss arena, and it was a boss that just like fills the whole screen, and the camera is just like an absolute nightmare to control. And like I don't know how you fix that, but man, there are just sometimes like that where I'm like, come on, From, like I don't need to, like I don't want to fight. I want to fight the boss, not the camera. Please.
And like you said, that's been a problem they've had in like pretty much every single one of their games. When the boss is just big, it's a problem.
Yeah, it's like again, like I know people are like, oh, but it's by design to be challenging. I'm like, no,
I disagree.
I'm very happy to fight a larger than life boss, but good God, like when I'm underneath it and all I can see is nothing, then I have to question.
No, I know. And a lot of the times, especially I found in Elden Ring's base game, those big bosses are far more agile than you expect them to be. So it's not like, fighting a big lumbering boss like the fire giants. It's like fighting the equivalent of like the cleric beast, but he's like 3 times the size. And it's like, okay, this is actually almost impossible to deal with.
The Fire Giant's actually a good example. I feel that was a big boss that was manageable, but maybe because you could ride torrents, so there was opportunity to like ride out, pull the camera out, go back in. But yeah, that's my only real. And I've only seen. I haven't beat any of the main bosses. I've kind of entered 2 or 3 arenas and gone like, oh, this is like probably a main boss. I'll come back. But the one I fought was like, man, what a cool build up to this boss. Like getting here was a hell of a journey, and then fighting the boss like, now I'll come back. I'm too low level. The boss is too big for me to wrap my head around. I'll just be back. But that aside, like I think if you liked Elden Ring, this is a no brainer. Like it's a bite sized version of the full game. If you're looking for, I've read. People typically take like 30 to 35 hours to finish the DLC.
That sounds great to me, honestly.
Yeah, but if you want to do everything, I've heard it's up to 50 hours if you want to like tick off all the bosses. So like that's, for an expansion, I mean, it's basically, like a soft sequel, if you want to call it that.
100%.
It's really good. And I think it's been cool to see them take, probably criticism and what they've learned from Elden Ring and pull it in here. Which has me going back to what I mentioned, like, I don't know if they do an Elden Ring 2, a Bloodborne 2, a Dark Souls 4, a Sekiro 2, like, I don't know what the hell their next game is. It'll be, like, it's weird because while I enjoy the open world of Elden Ring, a part of me does yearn for, like, the more linear Bloodborne and Dark Souls. Just, another experience of that caliber, but I don't know if they'll do that. Like, I don't know if they can go back to not open world.
I'm kind of with you. I kind of hope they do. If anything, just to kind of rein in the scope of it, which might mean that it comes out a bit quicker. I don't know if that's really the case now, because like their ambition is, to always be better, and to be better than Elden Ring is a tough thing. But I kind of do agree with you. Like, I love Elden Ring and I love its sense of discovery, but I think that comes at the expense sometimes of the feeling of interconnectedness. Like, you only get that in the main areas of the game. And I love, you know, in Dark Souls 3 and especially Bloodborne, like wrapping around on the world in a way that is just like, oh, I was exploring this place like 10 hours ago and now I'm back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that in this game. It just that isn't what it does.
I will say the open world does have moments like that, but it's never that same. It's never quite the same as, you know, you wrap around, you open a door, but there are moments where it is. I pop into the area, I go, oh, like I saw this ages ago, or like, yeah, I'm back here. Oh, this is how I wrap back around, and that's cool. Like how they do that in the open world. But yeah,
no, they definitely achieve it in certain areas, and I think it's kind of insane that they do manage to do that. But yeah, I'm with you on like a more condensed experience. I suspect they will do that because like I do think they go back to Elden Ring eventually. I do think they make a sequel. I don't think it's the thing they go onto immediately.
Yeah.
Especially because they have so much control over what they do. They're not like, by my understanding, forced by their publisher to go in one direction or the other. Yeah. I don't think they're going to do another Bloodborne.
No.
Because as much as I really want that, I just don't think, you know, them making a game for a single platform because Sony still holds the rights to the franchise. Like, I just don't think that's where they're going. And I don't think they're going to do a new IP because Elden Ring is such an undertaking. And to do a new IP now is tough. So, I don't know. But then again, do they go back to Dark Souls? Do they do another Sekiro? I don't think they do another Sekiro.
No.
So I actually don't know what they do. But I don't think we're going to hear about it for a good, like, 2-3 years at least. So yeah, we'll see. I'm curious to see what they do. It's a studio I will always be behind following. So because they haven't missed yet, and yeah, it'll be cool to see what they do. I'm very chuffed that you're enjoying Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm happy that it's got such a strong critical reception because these sorts of things follow us to such big events in gaming can go one way or the other. And you know, I feel like Tears of the Kingdom was a good litmus test for this, but that took almost 7 years to accomplish.
Yeah.
Whereas this in 2 years is kind of mind-blowing. So yeah, very, very cool. I'm excited to get to it eventually this year.
Sure. Good luck.
Yeah. I need to reteach myself on the what build did you settle on for this expansion? Because I know you've played the game multiple times with different.
So I'm just using my main character who had a bleed build, the hard dexterity in arcane. So I was using the Rivers of Blood katana, which a lot of people hate. What a great weapon! Don't judge.
Yeah,
me.
Fantastic weapon.
So yeah, it's just hard dex, high arcane. Haven't really found a replacement weapon in the DLC, but I'm hoping there's something out there.
Was Rivers of Blood an arcane weapon? I don't recall that being the case.
No, so it's mostly dex, a little bit of strength, and I think the arcane is there as well because it plays into the blood build up. So the higher your arcane, the more blood build up you do.
See, I don't remember any of that, but I remember my main build, my only build, was a blood one with Rivers of Blood as well.
Yeah.
But I do recall having to completely pivot to a strength build to beat the final boss because they were immune to bleed, and I just couldn't cope with it.
So it does scale up, with strength as well. So, yeah.
There was a very big sound in my stairwell right now, and I don't know what it was. I hope my cats are alive.
I'm sure they're fine. There was a great quick pivot on that. Is it Sarah Anderson, the lady who does like those good comics? There's one I saw this week. It's like two cats saying like, just snuggling like, "Oh, I love you," and then like 4 frames later, it's like, "You know what?" And the one cat's got its fist up. I'm like,
I love that
so
thing.
Accurate. That's cats. Like, oh, they're so sweet with each other. And the next thing, they're just destroying each other. Makes no sense.
They're just bipolar furballs. Like, honestly, it's very funny. I saw that comic going around. I've seen that comic a while back, but now it's like,
I think it's like
doing rounds again in color
or something.
It's such a good comic. I think it captures the spirit of cats completely.
100%.
It's really good. Shadow of the Erdtree. Great game. I'm excited to keep hearing your thoughts on that, especially when you get to some of the main bosses, because I haven't seen much. I've tried to like not look into it.
Spoilers
I just know
everywhere.
of one boss that keeps popping up on social feeds, the dancing lion, which
I've
looks
seen
like
that.
an absolute menace. So yeah, curious to
Yeah.
see. And apparently the final boss is an absolute nightmare
Nightmare,
for
yeah.
some people. Unless you're Timur Hussein from GameSpot, who beat it on his second try. Get good.
Maybe
That's another weird thing that's kind of popped up with Shadow of the Erdtree, which is kind of the opposite of what I expected, is that the general consensus from at least people playing is that it's too difficult, which is such a wild thing to think about in the context of the conversations around From Software's games, the whole idea of get good and, oh, these games shouldn't be easier and, oh, they shouldn't have difficulty settings. And now you've got people on Steam like downvoting it because they think it's too difficult, and you've got mods that make it easier, which hilariously, some of them are called journalist mode.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? These the most people who reviewed this game beat it without any sort of help prior to its release. Like, the fuck?
I have a feeling it's that it ties back to that Erdtree blessing. I think like that's a leveling system. Oh, and I don't know if I explained this, but that leveling system is only active in the DLC area, so it doesn't carry over to the base game. So it's like it's a kind of a necessity if you're having like a fixed damage boost and damage reduction. Like I think.
Do you think people are just not engaging with it enough?
Maybe
and not
they just haven't engaged with it, or they haven't. Like if you don't have any of those blessings, I'm like, you'll just get one shot by everything.
I did see Tam tweeting that like not long after the game came out and this sort of discourse was starting, and he was like, you need to focus on that. Like if you do not engage with that system, that's probably why you're having a bad time.
So again, like I don't know the raw numbers, but if I try to imagine like what it looks like, it's a fixed thing. It has to be when you've got 10 of these blessings, you're doing 20% more damage and you're taking 20% less.
Which
like
is
something like that,
significant,
which is massive. So I don't think it's you do 20 more damage per hit. It's like, no, I think it's a percentage based thing to make it viable for, you know, people who have low level characters and high level characters, sort of like even the playing field in that regard a bit. I don't know. I feel
Miyazaki, like he had an interview, I can't recall with who, and he was basically like, I'm really bad at playing the games that I make, and I lean on any sort of system there that will make the game easier, because you have this really vocal community that says, these things make the game way too easy. Rivers of Blood is a good example. The Mimic is another good example. People are like, that's a cheat, or running a magic build or whatever. But like, these things are in the game. They're not things that are like cheats or mods, or, and again, who the fuck cares? Play the game however you want, enjoy the game on whatever terms you want. But to suggest that certain builds or certain styles of players are cheats and then come to a DLC and complain that it's too difficult is, to me, is just like a sort of sweet irony that makes me laugh. It is just funny to me. I thought the whole discourse around it being flipped was kind of stupid. But anyway,
no one predicted it.
Yeah, I did not.
Predicted that.
Yeah.